You may or may not want to get to know Agnes. Welcome to the Film Threat Podcast. I am Chris Gore. I hope you're having a great day today. It's always a great day for me when I get to talk to filmmakers about their movies, especially ones I really love. This film, Agnes, it's what you expect and not what you expect, all wrapped in one. It is really a remarkable independent film bordering on horror, madness. It defies expectations, and I am happy to be here today with the producer and star of Agnes, Molly C. Quinn. Welcome to the Film Threat Podcast. How you doing?
I'm doing great.
This is really, we were talking before we started recording about how this film just completely defies expectations. I mean, really, like, I'm watching the beginning of it, and I see a lot of schlocky horror films, and I actually personally love them. You know, if they're done right, they're really good. And this movie sort of begins as sort of like this sort of a little bit of schlocky horror, and you're like, okay, yeah, like an exorcism. You've got priests, and they're all posturing, and the nuns, and then it goes to a completely different place, flipping it over, and you become more front and center, your character. How did this all come about? And this movie also has been praised and did an amazing festival run, actually, which I think is a testament because to the power of this film. Tell me about like how you got involved, and also as like you're the lead actor in this project, how you came onto it as a producer.
Gosh, a lot of questions in that opening statement right there. I like something that you said because I also like all forms of horror, whether they're full camp, psychological, like all of it. So I'm glad we're on the same page. And something I liked as a producer and an actor goes along with what you said about in the beginning, how it felt like, even the first time I read it, it was like, okay, I kind of have this warm blanket. Like I know what kind of genre this is, right? This is Nunsploitation. This is exorcism. This is, kind of a middle finger to Catholicism. Like I love that. And then just, the brakes like screech to a halt. The car does like a full, over and over, just rolls. And we're in a totally different world. It's like you wake up from a cold plunge and we're following this woman who is running from something. She's terrified. And so all of those things really kept me on my toes, as a fledgling independent film producer. I really want to do things, and Quagmire really wants to do things that just kind of tilt the genre on its axis a little bit, because there's so many great horror films out there from all around the world. It's pretty impossible to do anything completely original because look, there are amazing films out there, but you can just give it a slight twerk and it kind of gives you a completely different world. So that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to give people a slice of a completely different world that in a lot of ways, and where I think the true horror comes from in the second part of the film, is a horror that's very close to home for people,
Oh my God, you really hit that one on the head. It's like, this is like you said, comfort food horror film. We've kind of seen movies like this, right? Having said that, then the second half of the film is a different kind of horror. I want to talk about Sean Gunn, who is, he's so great. I love Sean and his brother James, of course, but he's very different in this, right?
Yes.
Like he's a very grounded, this sort of like not so successful comedian that you have an affection for and begin something of a relationship. But what's interesting is in that second half, it's how dramatically shifting. It's almost like it's a different director. And can you talk about like how the shift in tone in the second half, and then additionally working with Sean Gunn, who I I've just always admired.
Yeah, you know what? I just got back this morning from being in Atlanta with James and Sean. So I just had dinner with Sean like 2 nights ago. I absolutely love him. He's a wonderful human being. I've known both of them since I was a teenager, and so being around Sean for so long, I've I've always been an observer, and he's one of my favorite people to watch, just even in a friends hanging out setting. And one thing that Alon, Matthew, and I, my partners at Quagmire, really wanted to do is work with our friends and give them something that maybe they haven't gotten the chance to do yet, even though they've had incredible careers. And so when we read that part, when we read his stand-up monologue, I think from the very beginning we thought it was Sean, and we were so lucky. And still, I owe him a massive favor for coming along and really being in this very, very weird, indie horror film, and he just shines, man. And in a way, I've heard a lot of people's thoughts from the movie being on the festival circuit about the part that Sean plays and the structure of the film. And one of my favorite kind of rumors or ideas is that Sean's character of Paul Sachimo is actually a version of the devil, that he had possessed Agnes, and just in her speaking his name, it doesn't so much, maybe Mary doesn't flee the convent on her own. Maybe his name is a spell, and when she finds him, it's like they're completely, she's completely attached to him, because they do start this relationship, but it's really almost like Mary is overtaken by Paul and almost wants to possess him. So that was just a favorite kind of thing I had heard some people say about his character, and I'm like, you know what, that sounds great to me. I think it makes a lot of sense.
Well, you can read a lot into it. I mean, and I love that your character, Mary, sits there kind of, just amused but not laughing, and then laughs later at the joke. I thought
he puts a spell on her. He
right.
Completely, like, she shifts. Like, that's really like it's almost, there are 3 shifts in the film. We're in the convent, and then we follow Mary out of the convent trying to make a life on her own, and then her meeting with Paul Sachimo, which kind of causes something inside her to explode. She really can't hold in, whether you think that it's an actual demon that is possessing her or chasing her, or if you see that as just a representation of grief and what loss can do to us, as people. Either way, I think it works.
It does work, because it works so well, because comedy really is about telling the truth, right? Really great comedy is about telling the truth, and your character comes to terms with truths about herself, and in that, and that's the way I saw it. Yeah. Another thing I want to ask you about, it's a very weird question, but there's this theme of meat in the film, right? Like in the stand-up, there's a talk of sausage, and then there's this, I don't want to ruin it so much, but there's a great speech at the end about meat. And I thought that was just so well played. Can you talk about that a little bit? It just struck me like, oh, wow. Like, I know it's weird to say, it's like, hey, it's a profound conversation about sausage, but it is. Tell me about that. Tell me about it.
I love this question, and this is what I love about the movie, because everyone has their own ideas and comes up with their own questions, and it is a weird movie, so I'm so happy that we're getting weird questions, because it's making people think. It's a conversation movie that I want people to argue about, and I think that's a really cool observation. And I wonder if it could have something to do with the idea of fulfillment. Obviously Mary, from her loss, is looking to fill a void inside her, and she tries that with religion, with the sacrament, if you will, and it's kind of hollow. It doesn't really fix her problem, because what she really needs to do is sit down and face her own demons, and that kind of follows you all the way through. Sean's monologue about sausage could almost be a reflection on how we try to run and hide from our problems with sexual desire, and hiding what we're dealing with being carnal. And then at the end with that monologue, she's finally faced with what I think true healing is, which is, therapy, like actually taking the time to dissect what's going on, look through the sandwich, isolate the problem, and then deal with it. And that's the only way she will ever be full. She will ever be satisfied.
Yeah, it just works so well. I'm curious your role as producer, and I want to a real quick thing, because I know a lot of filmmakers watch and listen to the Film Threat podcast, but my advice always to an actor is just become a producer. Is like, if you want to get in front of the camera, just hire yourself. Don't, you can go to a bunch of auditions, which is great, but the best thing is create work for yourself. Some of the most successful actors are also producers of their own work. You learned that lesson early, which I'm really impressed by. But like, can you tell me about your role as producer on the project? There's so many things about this film that work so well. From I thought the director just did an amazing job with the tone, and then additionally the sound design. So much care, effort, and love went into the sound design for this movie, along with the score. So, can you talk about your role, stepping, from being an actor just to the producer, and what other parts of the project that you've influenced?
Yeah, man. I think you make a really good point, and I think the best art comes from empowering yourself as an actor, if that's what you want to do, and that's where you feel like you belong. Finding those friends that you believe in, that want to write that script or have that great script you've already read, or you really should do it yourself, because I think the synergy of working with people that you already know and love creates beautiful pieces. Yeah, when I've been really lucky as an actor. I moved to LA. I was 12 years old and started working like pretty quickly. But what I noticed was all of these like female producers around me. Because you gotta kind of, from my perspective, I came to LA from Texarkana, Texas. I didn't know what a producer was. I didn't know shit. But I met these women, and I recognized that they weren't just telling a piece of the story, which was like my job as an actor, right? Like to tell a part of the story. They were in charge of like putting the entire world together, the puzzle that they had to keep their eye on every part of it, like a bird's eye view. And I was really intrigued by that, and I was really empowered to go down that path. So I started. I think the first film that I produced was like when I was 20. And little baby steps until I found my partners and we formed Quagmire, and then it kind of intersected with this spot in my career where I was frustrated, and everyone kind of had an idea of me from my work, and it was lovely. It was a lovely idea, but it was limiting. And when I started talking to Divide Conquer, who had worked with Mickey Reese on Climate of the Hunter, they said, you might like this. Like, it's weird, it's out there, but maybe like give it a read. And I think one of my initial thoughts was, no one would cast me in this. No matter how good my audition was, no one would put me in this. So I'm going to do it. Just like you said, like I know I can do this. I understand what Mary's going through. I want to harness that raw power, and honestly, that power of like, let me prove myself to you. Like, you've seen me be this way, but you have no idea what I as an artist can accomplish. So that was like my ego playing into it. But this time it was right. And I think it led to an amazing film. And as far as producing, like when you're producing indie films, like your fingers are in every single part of it, Alana and I like cast the entire movie. We called on big favors from Rachel True, Haley McFarland, Chris Sullivan, Sean, everyone. And Mickey also brought his crew in, his Oklahoma actors, who we absolutely loved. And that mixing of talent, I also think gave the film this just different different texture, like different feeling, you know, because they were all talented, but they'd all worked in so many different genres that coming together, we just let them play. You know, we said, this is the page, but we want you to take it off the page and give it what you see. So we did a lot of rewriting the entire way through the process. For instance, with Haley McFarland's character of Agnes, that role was written for a older woman. And when Haley decided to join us, we're friends in real life, we were like, we need to rewrite this. We need to find like how we came to this together. So we devised this kind of entirely new subplot that we became novitiates at the same time and had kind of gone through the process of becoming nuns together, and how we'd always kind of fucked around and messed around and never really given our all, had always kind of reserved a part of our hearts, you know, mine for my son and her for Paul Sachemo, and how we kind of combust together in that way. And then, you know, we watched every cut. We helped with the edit all the way through. Yeah, you know, there's not a thing you don't do. I was cleaning up trash every day. I showed up before my call time. I left way after my call time. You know, I was putting sides together. Like, it's literally an indie production. When you're a producer on an indie, it's all hands on deck. You know, you have to be ready to do every single thing. And that's what I did. I did every single thing.
Well, Agnes is such an achievement. I'm just really impressed and can't wait to see what you're going to do next. One last question. What if your closest friend is going off to make their first film? What would be the one piece of advice you would give that person?
Expect everything to go wrong and work with it. You know, look at every mistake as an opportunity. Don't give up. Finish the film, no matter what. I don't care how hard the obstacles are. You'll get through it, but there's going to be obstacles.
Well, you know, those obstacles, like getting through them, it's part of the process, right? I mean, God. Well, I so love this film, and I'm so happy to see that it's getting released on December 10th on video on demand is when you can see it. So strongly recommend everyone go out and see Agnes. Molly, thank you so much for talking to me on the Film Threat podcast.
Oh man, thank you. This was really fun.